Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that little subscribe button down below and the little bell right next to it so you'll be notified when I upload new videos. So today is yet another special day in my life, which is the anniversary of when I legally changed my name. With that in mind, I thought maybe I would share how you might be able to pick your own name if you're transgender, or if you're an ally or friend, how you might be able to support a transgender person through their own name change. Now today is also a little sad for me for a pretty strange reason, and that's because I am finally getting rid of my old battle axe laptop here. As you can see, it's more like a luggable. It's pretty big. It's one of the old 17-inch MacBook Pros. Now before your eyes glaze over wondering why I'm talking about laptops, I promise it has something to do with my name change. When I bought this laptop, I was still presenting as male, but I knew I was transgender. I hadn't yet decided if I was going to transition or not, but I realized that I couldn't deny it any longer. And it was on this laptop that I actually wrote my very first post to this transgender support group, which still exists, called susans.org. And in that introduction, I remember that the first line was, "Today I woke up a girl." And that very same day, I packed up my son and myself, and I got in my minivan, and I headed home. And I knew when I got home that I was going to come out to my then wife. It was on that way home that I started to play with names in my head, that if I were to transition, what would I call myself? And I vividly remember walking into a Dunkin' Donuts, because my son loved donuts, and so we needed some for the road. And the young lady behind the counter had a name tag on, and the name tag said Megan. And that name struck me as something that maybe I would like to call myself. I kind of like the sound of it, Megan. So I came about this close actually calling myself Megan Maya Monet instead of Melody Maya Monet. Now after I got home and came out, I also tried out other names. One of the top contenders was actually D, as in D-E-E, and that's because everybody already called me that. Now they didn't call me the full feminine version of the name, they're actually taking the first initial of my old name, and I'm not going to reveal that old name here. I actually did last year at this time, and if you want to, you can go look up that video, but I have found that over time I am more and more uncomfortable using that old name. I don't know why, it just makes me feel creeped out in some weird way. Ultimately though, I rejected D. It didn't feel right. I felt like holding on to something of the past, but we did come up with a compromise. It was actually my ex-wife who came up with the name Melody, which is my legal first name, and because we could actually use D as a sort of nickname for Melody. And Melody also goes very well with my legal middle name, which is Maya. And Maya is the name I love and the one I actually go by in my personal life. And it's pretty handy because I know when somebody calls me Melody, they don't actually really know me. They know me from my social media or something else. If somebody refers to me as Maya, I know that they probably have met me and know something personal about me. And while Maya Melody Monet doesn't seem to quite flow, Melody Maya Monet seems to almost be singing. I love the rhythm of it, and I don't quite really like Melody by itself. I do love Maya by itself, but I also really love Melody Maya altogether. And now you know why I'm Melody Maya, the trans woman next door. And another important point is that Melody and Maya both fit the year I was born. And now I'm going to say this twice. Do not pick a name that is too young for you. One more time for the cheap seats in the back. Do not pick a name that's too young for you. Now I understand when we come out, we want to relive our teen years that we never got to have. And we go out there, and even though we're middle-aged, we try on little mini skirts and we try on this crazy makeup, and we do a lot of fun things. And we can experiment with those things all we want because they're not permanent. You can take off those clothes, you can take off that makeup. The name you choose is going to stick with you. Even if we decide that new name we picked doesn't quite fit and we go by a nickname, our government name is going to come up over and over again. You're not going to be able to get rid of it that easily. So all of that is to say that if you're over 40 years old, you might want to rethink calling yourself Dakota or Brittany. Now ultimately you get to decide how you want your new life to be, but this is just something to think about. Now how should you pick your name? You shouldn't feel obligated to use the feminine version of your masculine name. So if you're called Robert, don't think that you need to call yourself Roberta. And the last thing you should do is to pick something just to make it easier on your friends to accommodate them. This is a very personal choice and you have to live with it for years and years to come. But a great way to pick your name is exactly the same way that parents go about picking names for their new babies. There are of course lists on the internet for popular baby names, but not just for the curt ones. It actually goes back into history. So what I did is I looked up 1971, and yes, I was born that long ago. And I found Melody, and I also found Maya, the way I spell it. Now Maya wasn't one of the top names, which is an important point. If you want to be unique, you don't have to pick the most popular names. You can go down that list. You don't have to pick Ethel just because it was the most popular name in 1955. Whatever you pick, make sure you love it. And I mean love it with the passion of 1,000 suns. Try writing it out. What does it look like with your last name? Try saying it out loud. Does it flow with your last name? Have some very close friends try out that name to see if it catches your attention in a crowded room. Live with it for a month to see if you still like it as much at the end as you did at the beginning. A friend of mine once gave me that advice in regards to tattoos. Take a design of it and put it on your bedroom wall. And every morning when you wake up, look at it and see if you still like it at the end of a month. Well, names are no less permanent, so I think it's great advice for that too. And once you've decided that name, then announce it to the world and ask people to exclusively call you by that name. And be consistent about it. Don't flip back and forth between your old name and your new name. And if you're not ready to do that, frankly, you may not be ready for a new name at all. Because to other people, all that flipping back and forth isn't just a sign that you aren't ready for a new name. It's a sign that you're not ready for your new gender. It may not be fair, but a lot of people are going to be thinking that. Now, be safe, of course. If you're not presenting full time, there may be places where it's unsafe to use that other name. I've also heard of situations where you might go to your parents' house with your friends, and your friends are already using that new name, but your parents aren't quite ready. So use common sense. But those should be the rare exceptions and not the rule. Now, to friends and allies of transgender people, use that name. Don't be stubborn. If you accidentally use the old name, apologize and then use the new name and move on. I know it's embarrassing when that kind of thing happens, but don't act out of frustration and just start using the old name. We all make these mistakes, including me. I actually had this big crush in high school by the name of Barbara. And a few years ago after my transition, I actually had a chance to sit down and have dinner with her. And in between the time I knew her from high school and now, she started identifying as queer. And an important part of that identification for her was to shorten her name from Barbara to Barb. Well, at dinner I was using Barbara quite a lot because I didn't understand that this was actually part of her identity. Well, she stopped me cold and she said, "Will you stop using Barbara and call me Barb?" And she was kind of annoyed about it. And I was super embarrassed because I know how important names can be. So yeah, I have felt that sting. I understand how uncomfortable it can be to use new names like this and to get stuck on that old name. But your transgender friend is making a very large and very scary change. And your part of it is actually very small. All you have to do is respect them and respect their changes. I mean, names is something that we expect as a courtesy of anyone. Lots of people don't like their given name and use a nickname. It actually would be kind of rude to say, you know what, I'm not going to use your nickname even though you like it. I'm just going to use your given name. This is something we extend to celebrities all the time too. I mean, Puff Daddy went from P. Diddy to Diddy and back to Puff Daddy again, and everyone just rolled with it. Jennifer Lopez likes to be called J-Lo, so people call her J-Lo. Prince once changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol, and everybody just started using that symbol. I mean, come on. And yes, transgender people, you're going to run into resistance on this. We all do. And for us, what we need is patience and to make sure that they understand what the boundaries are. My ex-wife actually told me the story after it happened, which was we went to church together one time. I was standing off by myself and talking to some people, and by that point I was pretty unrecognizable. And a fellow church member came up to my ex-wife and asked her, "Who's that woman over there?" And she told him, "You know who that is." And he said, "No, I really don't." And then she said, with a little bit of arch significance, "Yes, you know who that is." And then his eyes got really wide and he said, "Well, I'm just going to call him by his old name." Now, what I wish my ex had told him in that moment was, "No, you won't. You will respect her new identity." But she didn't, and that's okay. That was her choice. But you friends and allies out there, don't put up with that. If you're there with your friend and somebody's intentionally using that old name or somehow misgendering them also, speak up and let them know that it's not okay. That person acting that way will take your silence to mean that in some way you agree with them. And your transitioning friend desperately needs your help and your support. You need to be that person for them. And on that note, like, share, and subscribe, and see you around the interwebs.